We're here. We made it. We have a very special guest with us today, Natasha Rabsatt. Natasha Rabsatt comes to us from the southernly part of the United States, in a land called Florida. Natasha, welcome to the Christopher Lafayette Podcast show.
Thanks, Chris, for having me.
We're so very happy to have you. To have Natasha as a guest, we're going to be doing some serious digging and exploring in the world of art, design, and creativity. Shall we begin?
Yes.
Let's chop wood. Who is Natasha Rabsatt?
So that's a good question because, Chris, one of the things that is interesting about me is that I wear a lot of hats and I do a lot of things. So for me, when you ask that question, I think, well, I'm all these things. Like I'm a designer, I'm a technologist, I'm a strategist, I'm an analyst, I'm a scientist, I'm a storyteller, I'm a researcher, I'm a developer, I'm an artist, I'm a learner, and I'm a leader as well. So a lot of what I do doesn't necessarily fit into a specific box. I'm just a jack of all trades, and as my sister says, a master of many.
Let's discuss design. It's a word we hear often in technology. It's a word that we hear often, typically in the throes of business. We use it for marketing. We use it for branding. We use it for immersive simulated constructs. We use it for a lot. But what is the world of design today from Natasha's eyes?
So design for me it's universal, it's multicultural, it's exploratory. It's just so many different things, right? You can blend it with technology and create a lot of really cool things. But at the heart of design is, I think design needs to have a soul. And I think when we see and different designs or different art, right? Art and design, there's a line between both. But when we hear and we see different things out there, we are trying to figure out a lot of times if it really resonates. And when it resonates, we just know that it does. It's not something we think about, it's something we feel. It's something that connects with us in a really authentic way. And so when I talk about the soul of a design or even art is very more personal, but that soul is, we're essentially imprinting on our work. Right. So as a designer, I just see myself as leaving a little piece of me in that particular work. Right. And I think when we're able to do that, we're able to create something that is very human centered for a human population, right? A human audience. So design for me it has to have a soul. I know in different roles, I've been in various design roles. And in those roles, we sometimes have to create many different things and sometimes very quickly, right? In a production or development team or cycle. But I think when we're able to give a little bit of ourselves to a design, I think we're able to create something beautiful. And part of that isn't just about creating beauty, it's creating something that's authentic, something that feels real, and it's not, like in some cases, overproduced. It's not overly done in such a way that it loses the essence of what it made it real and that made it organic. So design for me is a lot of things, but it has to have a soul. And I think allowing myself to imprint on my work helps to create something beautiful, but I'm also not afraid of creating things that are ugly, because there is beauty in the imperfect. And I think that is something that's really important to me as I create.
Fascinating on many levels, looking at the juxtaposition, or really the dichotomy between ugly and beauty, and how there's some type of inherent value in one of the same. Natasha, let me ask you, when we talk about design, for our audience that is trekking with us today, that's listening in and leaning in with us on this exploration, when we talk about design, what are we actually talking about? It's a very wide used word, and it has a manifold use case. What type of design, from your experience, are you most familiar with, and what arrived you to that destination point?
So that's an interesting one. So I have to sort of start at the beginning. So when I was younger, as a child, I was an artist, and I would paint. I did mostly use watercolors. And I did watercolors, and I did some acrylic painting. I did a little bit of drawing and stuff like that, but it was mostly painting. And then I spent a few years doing that, and then I got into sports and other stuff, so I sort of stopped doing art, right? And art was this thing that I didn't understand when I was younger that could actually be like a career. I just thought it was a hobby, right? It didn't occur to me that it was a career. And then I went through many different jobs, I would say, in different sectors, really different. I started my career off in analysis and counterterrorism. And you ask, well, how did I get to be in where I am now? And then one day I was like, you know what? I really love helping people to learn. And so a lot of it started off in that kind of learning and kind of training sphere. And that sort of evolved. I went and did my master's and got a few design jobs, and it's evolved into more visual design, interaction, building interactions, multimedia development. And then I found myself really interested in extended reality. So I pursued some education and training in extended reality as well. But where I am now is a lot of what I'm doing is, it's so multidimensional, right? It's telling stories that are compelling. It's using all of these tools and all of these experiences that I've had in my career, and really harnessing that and wielding that to again tell these powerful stories, but also to inspire, right? Because even if you're creating something in learning design, or you're creating something that's more artistic, or in graphic design, or any of these different disciplines, is the goal, many of the goals are still human-centered, and they're all about inspiring people to action, or inspiring people to something bigger, right? And so design is really to find solutions, right? So when we intentionally create designs, it's to, I don't want to say solve a problem, but it's to find a solution to a challenge, right? And art, how that sort of fits in is, art is more personal, whereas design sometimes is definitely less personal, right? And so someone like me, I sit on like one foot on the art side and one foot on the design side, because what I've learned in all of these experiences in different sectors, different industries, is just that you have to bring yourself to the design. So whether I'm making something for myself personally or something that is more artistic, I have to show up. And the same thing with design. People relate very well to other humans, and having that human touch in it, just not just about did I follow these steps, right? Like these are the design. For good design, you need to do these things, right? And every design specialty has their own list of things. Even in marketing, there's a lot of things that in the marketing industry that it's very similar to the industries that I've worked in terms of design. There's a lot of overlap there. Branding, visual design, a lot of these things, the voice, who's that audience, understanding, doing research, user experience. But nevertheless, is you need to bring yourself to that design and be able to imprint and help someone along the way. My favorite things that I love in when I create a design, I'd love to create something that people connect to, but I also really love when you get the feedback from that client. They're like, wow, Natasha, that was really amazing, and thank you so much. That to me is so powerful, because it's not just the design itself, it's the experience too, right? It's the experience, and you want a design to, especially because it is to provide a solution to have as long of a shelf life as possible, to be potentially scalable, to be accessible, to be something that feels more authentic, and it's not just stuff thrown into a software. Because you can be a master at putting things in a software, but can you touch someone's heart? Can you touch their soul? Can you inspire them? And that's what I seek to do in the work that I do and the work that I've done. Not every project that you do, I think, as a designer or as a creative, can always have that big wow. And that's just a reality. But I do think that when given the right opportunity and you make that opportunity, the goal is always to push that design just a little bit. So some clients sometimes are more open to do whatever you want to do, whatever is awesome. And then some clients have a very specific vision, and they're looking for things to be executed in very specific ways. But I think if you can show up and say, I'm bringing this to your design, and not just that I'm here to work with you, is that I also bring a different point of view, and I know that this is going to resonate because I'm understanding what you're asking for. So there's a lot that goes into design, and I think what is design? Design is a creation, but it has to also, I think, be somewhat personal. You have to imprint on that work to really get it to the next level. And it's not just throw things in a software and make things with items flying around the screen, and that makes it amazing. It needs to have a purpose, and that's where I'm a big proponent of the research and the user experience research that goes into that. We have to really understand who we're creating for, and take a global lens, but still bring out the best in or be able to showcase the cultural differences as well. For example, right? So if you're creating for an audience in Europe, there may be certain things that are certain markers of European culture that you need to bring into the design, whereas in the US centric type of design, or in another country or in another community within a country. So we have to be able to understand that intersectionality and bring that accessibility and diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging.
Well stated, and let's run into that. Let's bring us into the world of culture. What does culture look like for you in design, and what's its role?
So culture, I look at it as it's what makes us unique. And it's also, in some cases, what also drives us, right? It's how we have sort of like how we experience the world, right? And sometimes we have a very specific lens, or in other cases we can have a very global lens based on our personal experiences. So when we talk about culture, I think about, as a world traveler, I've been to over 50 countries all over the globe and many continents. And the thing that I see collectively is that people are more alike than they are different. And we see so many different skin tones of people, so many different languages, so many different expressions, so many different religions and spiritual practices. All of these things, right, are things that I think we need to, as designers and creators, to be able to think about when we're putting something together. But when we're talking about culture in other ways too, it's culture as in what else are we inspired by, or what else are we influenced by? And things that I'm also influenced by that I bring into my design are art, and I bring in things like my inspiration from music, inspiration from travel, from exploration. I mean, I'm sort of an outdoor junkie a little bit. So you see me like all like polished and stuff, but I throw on like my flannel shirt, my ripped jeans and some boots, and you go out and hike and go caving and just all of this exploration, backcountry, whatever, swimming. I just love adventure, but I love what I'm able to see, because in all of these different environments, whether they're remote, they're in another country, in a local village, in my own community where I'm from, people have learned how to live, right? They've learned how to, kind of going into some of the anthropology, right? We've evolved, and we've learned how to meet our basic needs. And we'll say, well, what does this have to do with design? It has a lot to do with design, because those are as humans, these are our influences. This is how we've grown up. This is how we choose to live. But when you travel the world as well, you take those little pieces, and just like we imprint on our designs, right? We bring a little bit of ourselves to that design. We leave a little piece of ourselves and those people that we've met, and they've left a little piece of themselves with us. And so collectively through life, we're walking and experiencing, and we have now brought in our perspective. And that allows creators, I think, I can speak for myself, I think that for me has brought in such a perspective, right? And it's not just we see all the beautiful things in the world. With that, you see the things also that are maybe not great. And with that, we also need to, I think, are able to bring in some empathy with the work that we do as well. So as designers, we're not just putting stuff on a screen to make it look good. There are back-end designers, front-end designers, people in different parts of this, and then we get this final pretty product, or this final product that someone has, and it's like delivered, here's your design. But all the layers in that design are also reflective of the audience and the people and their cultures. And we want everyone to be able to see, at least I want everyone to be able to see themselves and feel themselves in my designs. And that, because that representation, that access is really important.
When we talk about nativity, where we're from, our roots, our sojourn from where we've started, if you will, where we've been to where we are today. Artists, designers, they pull from something. Some pull from music. Some pull from other art and creativity. Some, I'm told, pull from pain and emotion. Where do you pull your inspiration from for your creativity? Let's go beneath the surface. Let's take it there. Where you're in that zone, when you're working with a client, when you're working on a project, when you're in your absolute creative Zen space, where is that creativity coming from to really take it there, to reach your premium?
So for me, first and foremost, as someone that comes from a multicultural background, I have a Latin, Indigenous, and Black African descent. And for me, being someone that comes already from multiple backgrounds, that and I own these, right? I actively say that this is who I am, right? This is how I describe and choose to describe myself. All of those, I think about things as simple as like how people talk, right, in those communities, and where sometimes an action is a conversation, a facial expression is a conversation, a movement is a conversation, right? And we learn what those conversations are about through our own experience, right? Growing up and experiencing. So that's one of the places that I take inspiration from is from my roots, right? My roots are really important to me. And then the other places I take inspiration from are that travel that I talked about, seeing the world outside even of my initial lens where I came into this world, right? So I was privy to this much information when I came into the world. And as I continue to evolve and experience life, I've been actively expanding that vantage point, seeing more, understanding more people. And so I bring that into my design. I also bring in a love of sound, and I call it sound, not just music, but sound, right? So when you're out, especially in like, think of like on a remote environment, we're out hiking in, a beautiful national park or something like that, or just somewhere that's just, you're one with the earth, right? And you hear, there's something with the simplicity of nature. It's simple and complex all at once. The sounds of birds, the sounds of the water, the sounds of the ocean, those vibrations, right? And then you think about how that translates into music, right? So when you hear a song on the radio or whatever, something resonates with your spirit or your soul, right? And you're like, I need to hear that again. And there may be songs or music that have touched your soul and it's imprinted on you. And it evokes emotion, right? It's an experience in itself. And so these things are the things that I bring into my work. So when you take it to that level, I'm inspired by humanity. I'm inspired by the natural world. I'm inspired by the cosmos and some of that, the sublime. And so that's what I bring in. There's a spirituality, I think, too, when I design. It can be emotional because I feel like if I can feel that design, I know others can feel it too. So that's where I say, if I had to say what type of designer I am, I would say I'm an experience designer. And not just because you have this checklist, right? Or if you're a graphic designer, you can do these things. It's not just the mechanical pieces of design, it's what you bring to the table. And I do so many different things and I bring all of these pieces together. But I want people to feel something and to be inspired and want to do more. You inspire other people to greatness. I've been inspired and I am constantly inspired by other people. I'm inspired by art. I was big into, I used to rent, borrow books from the library, when we used to go to the library, right? I would borrow books on like Picasso, Monet, people like that. So I was kind of a nerd when it came to some of the art, and but I was into gaming too. So that exploration and adventure, maybe I couldn't go out and go into caves then, but I could be in a video game, and I'm telling my age, Nintendo and some of that stuff, right? And I could explore, and when you have those, like, I'm a big fan of old NES, right? A lot of those games came out in like the 80s, And then I probably played them. I was playing them in the late 80s or 90s, whenever Nintendo came. I think it maybe early 90s. And I was like, whoa, I'm like transported to this place. And it's an experience, right? It's all an experience. Music is an experience. I love concerts and shows. They're experiences. And so whatever I create, I try to bring that in, imprint, and ensure that what I'm doing feels authentic, and it still meets the design requirements, and working with others to actualize that vision.
How has music influenced your career?
I think music has influenced me a lot, in the sense that, sometimes you're like, those words speak truth to your soul, regardless of whatever type of music. I'm a big, again, grew up in the 90s mostly. So during that time frame, the alternative rock, for example, was a big deal. So I listened to a lot of the grunge rock, as we call it. I'm into colors and patterns and stuff, but I am a little edgy too, right? So I kind of like that as well. But I listen to a lot of stuff. So world music, opera. I love Andrea Bocelli, listen to like Enya, Enigma, Thievery Core. And then in other realms and other genres, I listen to I'm originally born in the island, so listen to all of the reggae and soca and all of that type of stuff, the Latin and indigenous beats. I listen to that too. I love a lot of salsa, bachata, merengue, like all of those. But I like all of it, and I feel like you get culture through that too, right? And that culture helps to, again, widen this vantage point more and more and more. And then when I'm able to create, I have references, right? And those references allow me to reach more people in more meaningful ways.
Let's jump to the other side of the tracks, these contemporary tracks in the world of technology. When we talk about XR today, for the audience members who are listening who may not know what that means, meaning extended reality, commonly referred to as an acronym for virtual and augmented reality, a technology that will be hitting the stratosphere, that is being consumed by more and more enterprises and consumers each and every day. It's a technology that brings us to the next level. Some call it the metaverse. Others call it virtual world installations. When we talk about going from one experience of looking at design in our devices, our tablets and desktops and laptops and phones, from actually going in to interact with design, Natasha, how promising is the future of design of XR?
So I think there's a lot of promise there. And I think the ability to be able to really get that full immersion, because we're still talking about experience, right? We're talking about how people feel in environments. We're talking about feeling like you're actually there. I think just that feeling, especially when we're talking about virtual reality, is extremely powerful. And it's not just that it's cool to do, right? Because I think no matter what we create, it needs to be the right technology for what we're creating. So it's just mindfulness still around leveraging XR. But I think about when people are able to experience in such a way that they're able to connect the dots, right? And that's why even in the world of learning, in the world of, I would even say, marketing, branding, all of that stuff, it is so powerful. And I think that we're going to see more of it. And when we're going into, this concept behind the metaverse, right? This 3D space, persistent space, maybe not all 3D, but we'll say could be 3D, right? Persistent space, persistent and consistent experience. Like, what does that do? Right now, a lot of our experiences are 2-dimensional. And when we're able to see things in 2D, more immersive, and 3D, fully immersive, it's almost like being in a reality within a reality, right? We're able to see and grow and do things we haven't been able to do. So I only think we're going to see more of it. And I think that there will be the thing about the space as well. It is growing. So there will be things that are going to be amazing about it. And then there will be lessons that we learn collectively as a community, because it's in the unknown in a lot of places. There may be newer technologies that even come out as well, not just augmented or virtual reality. We may have a new technology as well.
Given your background and extensive experience in advisory, with probably done an untold number of different projects that you've been involved with, working with brand and company alike, startup, corporation, what do you see are the common mistakes, the subtle mistakes, perhaps the big ones, but what are the common mistakes that brands take when approaching storytelling? You mentioned storytelling earlier, and I hear that so much as a broad terminology. And I believe that probably 50% of the people that I hear talking about storytelling, I don't see it demonstrated in their content development and creation, or in the distribution and the makeup of their own product offerings to markets. From your lens, from your experience, what are some of the common mistakes that you're seeing when it comes to approaching brand campaigns, when it comes to approaching storytelling fundamentally? And what have you suggested and advised to all the different company participants that are with us today, all the different startup founders and marketers that are listening in? What do you say to them as encouragement towards better steps in storytelling?
Well, first and foremost, I think anyone that is creating, developing, advising, strategizing, and creating solutions for the betterment of people, I think first and foremost, they should keep doing it. The next thing that I would say is that when we talk about storytelling, regardless if you're making something for yourself or a company or whatever, I think it's important to be able to think about, is this story going to resonate with many different people across different cultural backgrounds? And is it, and then the other part of that is, are these stories that are being told from only a limited point of view? I think we need to get to a point where we hear all of these other voices, right? And I think that helps to bring access, that helps to bring authenticity. The other part about what general mistakes that I think that I have encountered in my life around design, right? I think one of them is, if you're a creator, is you have to be willing to imprint on your work, even if it's just a little bit, because I think that's when you're able to really elevate your design or whatever you're creating. the next thing that I think is really important is that we're able to really include people through accessibility. Because I think accessibility is, we hear about it, but I think a lot of designers and creators are afraid. Some employ it and some employ it very well, right? But it's a conscious effort to do it every time. And I think we can't be afraid of failing. I'm a big proponent of fail fast, fail often, because that helps to direct your path and what you're doing. And if you take the approach of, well, I need to make sure it's perfect first before I even do it, like that could be a problem, right? Can limit what you're doing. But accessibility, the standards are evolving. I mean, we have the web content accessibility guidelines. It's comprehensive. It differs from country to country, right? There are all these components to it, but I just think about it. Why should someone who has a certain ability level not have the ability to engage in that experience? Like, why? And I think when you get the feedback, and if you get the feedback like this, we're missing this, it's like we can't take it personally. We have to look at it as like, well, we didn't think about that and we need to fix this design, right? We need to improve it, and we need to improve our process. We need to improve our workflow. We need to widen our workflow. And I think it's important to have that vantage point. And if you don't have that built into, let's say, whatever your company or your business already has, then, you know, self-initiative, right? How do we make it better? How do we make it more usable? And then the last thing that I'll say is, and I think this is, and these are just my personal opinions, right? Based on my experience collective, is I think if you have you hire a designer or a creative or whatever to do work. So these are the people, the clients and customers in the world, right? I think it's important to be able to trust your designer, right? And let go a little bit, right? We can program things for you and you can get exactly what you asked for, but is it the best thing? And so I would say designers, creators are not necessarily only programmers, right? You can make things, you can use a software, right? I can help you, we can work together, but really it's be okay with letting go, because I'm pretty confident that many creatives will come up with something that you didn't even envision. And that might be a really amazing solution to what you're trying to achieve. And so with that, it's a partnership. And so I just ask and let go a little bit and see where it goes. And you might get something that shakes the ground.
Natasha, as always, you're so informative when it comes to your craft and so intriguing when it comes to this experience. One question left for you today. And we'll have it in a twofold perspective. A, what inspires you the most today in your work? And B, what's the most important thing that we all should know about you?
What inspires me the most, I think, is still creating opportunities to empower and enable people to greatness. And sometimes it could just be something that someone sees in passing, and this is where I love like all the different disciplines within design, right? Whether you're a graphic designer, you're an interaction designer, you're a multimedia specialist, a marketeer, instructional or experience designers, filmmakers, whatever, you're creative. All of these people are doing really amazing work, and they're doing things that are really to help, again, to inspire people, inspire something. And so I take that really seriously in my role, and not just creating myself, but advising, strategizing, a lot of these concepts around how do you build programs around meaningful design practices. And then the last question about what is the most important thing that people should know about me is that I have accepted the fact that I'm a master of many. And that might sound a little bit weird, but I remember I was saying before, where I always used to say I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. But because I have owned my talents and what I know that I can do with those talents, and wield that in a way that is useful and positive in this world, I think that's why I'm able to really think and create really interesting stuff. The colors, I've been told that I have a gift with colors and just really interesting concepts. And that's where I sort of leave things, is that one of the biggest things I think in life is that we own our paintbrush, right? And so when your paintbrush becomes your hand, that is your hand. It's not a tool, it is your hand, right? And so I think for me, the most important thing is that I have owned that for myself. And as a result, I feel that I'm able to help others to create something amazing, create amazing experiences.
Incredible. Owning your paintbrush, mastering your skill, owning your talent, fly. Everyone, you've heard it here first on the Christopher Lafayette Podcast show. From Natasha Rabsatt. Natasha, thank you for being our guest.
And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
To our audience, we hope that you're keeping safe, well, and that you're happy. Continue to chop wood. We'll see you again at the Christopher Lafayette Podcast show.